Kate Silverton with you live from Munich. Welcome to FasTrack. Now, as a broadcast journalist, I go where the story takes me, from the front lines in Afghanistan and Iraq into the shadowy world of rhino poaching in South Africa and Kenya. It's my job to bring you closer to the people making news and the issues that matter. Today, I invite you to join me in exploring an uncharted realm filled with valuable resources, hidden insights, and infinite potential. I am, of course, talking about your data. We'll be going behind the hype and the headlines to find out the truth and about data. What makes the data revolution so revolutionary? Will it be the game changer that transforms the way we work and live, or is it just another Y2K sound and fury signifying nothing? Well, today's show features an impressive lineup of experts. They've come here to answer your questions about data, maybe some you didn't even know you had. We want to hear your thoughts today, your comments. Please share them. #IBMML. First up, we'll hear from one of the most brilliant minds of data science. Please welcome the founder of Fast Forward Labs, data scientist in residence at Axel, and former chief scientist at Bitly, Hilary Mason. Hilary.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you all. It's a real pleasure to be here talking about data. And I wanted to start with some definitions to really ground us in how we think about our data. Because what is data aside from an imperfect representation of reality? And as George Box said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And data is becoming more and more useful. And that's really what brings us here, after all. And you can ask, why now? We've had data for 30 years, 40 years, in some cases, 100 years. So why today? And you can think, of course, it's related to innovations in compute power. So we have access to compute power in our mobile devices that exceeds the computation in the entire world, even just 40 years ago. That is an incredible change. Today in 2017, we're particularly excited about the cost of GPUs and additional kinds of processing, making new techniques, particularly in deep learning and neural networks, very affordable. And a lot of innovation in this space comes from things that were expensive, becoming so cheap you can play, right? The next thing is that we actually know what to do with our data when we get it. We've had many innovations and a lot of progress in algorithms, in building statistical models, in infrastructure, in the tooling around the systems that we build. Things are becoming commoditized such that even 10 years ago, if you wanted to build a big data system, you would have to hire a team of engineers to do that. Today, from your phone, you can spin up a cluster somewhere else in the world with no effort. And finally, of course, we actually have data. Many folks here work at companies that have been collecting data as the exhaust process of running your business for many years. And I hope you're thinking about what you're going to do with it. Last definition is to say, what do we actually mean? Like, what is big data? What is analytics? What is machine learning? And so I want to give you a very simple way of thinking about it. Big data is the ability to get your data in one place and count things in that data. And what you do with that, that's analytics, counting things to answer a business question, to figure out a product problem. Data science is counting things cleverly. It's building models on your data. Machine learning, counting things cleverly with feedback loops. So building models on your data that get better as it gathers more data from the real world. And today, of course, we talk about AI, which we can say is an umbrella over all of these things. And it's a really exciting moment. Can we move to the next slide, please? It's an exciting moment and an inspiring moment in data and machine learning because we're able to imagine interfaces, machines that interface with us using the same tools that we use to interface with each other, natural language. Today, we're able to go beyond just working with structured data, and we're able to think about what that means in terms of unstructured data. We're able to imagine machines that can talk to us, where we can have relationships with those machines. I've done a lot of work in this world of unstructured data in the last few years, and I want to share one way that I like to think about it. And so one thing we've worked on extensively is text summarization algorithms. And that means you take an article, and you get a shorter article out of your system that contains the same information in that article. And you may say, OK, that's cool, but I could read an article if I wanted to. And of course, you can. So we've gone something that might have taken 20 minutes and made it take 2. That's interesting, but it's not revolutionary. But what we can do now is take 10,000 articles, 50,000 articles, figure out the 10 dominant points of view in that corpus of information, and summarize each one of those. And that is something that we could never as human beings do before. We could not read 10,000 documents and then benefit from the wisdom in that information. And that's what's so interesting about data science and analytics today. It's not that easy, though. When a lot of people think about data and they think about data science, they think it is primarily a technology problem. And how do you solve technology problems other than by buying a technical solution to your technology problem? But you can't buy your way into good data science practice. And you can't do it because the data is the core of the business. The data cannot be, that intelligence cannot be entirely outsourced. The real way to think about data science is not as a pure technology problem, but as a human problem. Just in the way that big data allows us to ask a question of our data and get the answer back before we forgot why we asked the question in the first place. It's really a human innovation that is enabled by the technology of data science. And it's not a dichotomy between intuition and technology. A lot of people like to worry that perhaps data and machine learning is going to replace what they do. And that, of course, will never work. I'll share one example. We love to use data science to take the assumptions that we currently make and make decisions based on about the business, about the world, and test those assumptions. So we did some work with a wonderful telecom company, and they wanted to know why customers were churning or leaving, which is a really wonderful data science, as in it's counting things cleverly, modeling customer churn. It's a great data science problem, and probably one that many of you can empathize with or also have to solve. And they already knew that customers that spent too much money were more likely to churn. It makes a lot of sense, right? And so we were indeed able to show in the data that what they already knew was correct. But we also found out that customers that spent too little were likely to churn. They were not engaged customers. And so by creating a promotion to get those people more engaged, they were able to capture some more of that value. And that's a great example of data science enhancing intuition and assumption to make better decisions. And we are still at the beginning of this process, which may seem like a challenge. Data science is done differently in every company, whether they do it well or badly. Unlike practices, say, like software engineering, where most companies pretty much follow the same process. In data science, at a very high level, it's different than engineering. And Richard Hamming, who's a wonderful computer scientist and the father of information theory, always said, in science, if you know what you're doing, stop. In engineering, if you don't know what you're doing, stop. But data science is science. It is not engineering, and it requires an experimental process and an open-mindedness that we have not always had in our corporate environments and in our cultures. And it also involves getting people to think a little bit differently about how they make decisions, to realize that they have a tool available that can enhance their productivity and their ability to make good decisions. And so as you think about how to use your data, I would urge you to first look for problems where you currently spend a lot of money paying people to do something, but that have a chance of being automated. And start there. Start building infrastructure over that, and then look for new product, new business, new revenue opportunities that can be driven off of the product made in Project 1 by taking advantage in Project 2. And we're seeing this kind of approach work pretty well in industries from finance to insurance to media. People are able to automate components of processes from everything from financial news reporting to celebrity gossip. We're able to make robust predictions with great confidence intervals, and everything from investment portfolio management to real estate management. So there is, in the challenge, the fact that data operations and cultures are not so well defined. There is both a challenge. It will require work and will require change. But there is also an opportunity. And I don't know about all of you in the audience, but I do expect that opportunity and that moment of change is really what makes this so exciting. And what we'll see here today and explore here today are the ways that our technical tools are evolving to enable us to effectively take advantage of that change and of that opportunity. And now I want to leave you with one more little story that draws again from some of the potential. One of the things that I'm most excited about are applications that allow us to make use of unstructured data, like audio, video, photos, text data, data that I bet many of you have, but just ignore. And I can tell you that I've been in roles where I've had access to that sort of image-enriched data and just had to ignore it because we couldn't possibly do anything with it. And we're seeing applications today that are able to take data like this and change the way we do everything from generate creatives for marketing. They can be personalized and created by neural networks, all the way to change the way we do surgery and think about our own healthcare. And so it's a really exciting moment to be thinking about data, and I hope you'll join me in listening today and getting excited about it as well. Thank you.
Hilary, thank you very much indeed. I love the excitement and the engagement that Hilary then presents. It's as much relevant to my world, of course, as it is to yours. It really is an art, then, to data science. We'll hear more from Hilary later on in the program, and do stay tuned, of course, for Hilary's breakout, Engineering Our Data-Driven Future. That's right after the broadcast. First, though, let's just take a look, then, at where data is heading next. Predicting the future of anything, as we all know, can be risky. Looking back, though, some of history's worst predictions have been about technology. Case in point, just a decade ago, a New York Times columnist declared, "Everyone's always asking me when Apple will come out with a cell phone." My answer is, probably never. And we all know how that turned out. These days, experts are talking about the next renaissance of technology, a renaissance that my next guest says is hiding in plain sight. Has he got it right? That's just one of the things we hope to find out. We're thrilled then to welcome General Manager of IBM Analytics, Rob Thomas, who's with us in the FasTrack newsroom. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So you predict then, Rob, we are on the cusp of an industry renaissance.
We really are, and history is a great teacher. And you go back to the year 1890, that's when the first automobile was driven down a street in Detroit. And it took another 20 years before Henry Ford would make it a mass market product. 20 years from the start to there. And after a while, it hit a tipping point. And sometimes that happens in technology.
And you think we're at that tipping point?
We're absolutely at a tipping point right now. I would say data science is like that first car. We've had this vision for nearly 20 years. We can spot patterns in our business, insights that will help us make better decisions, but it's still very specialized and expensive today. It's something that's reserved for the top 1% of the smartest people in any organization. Most people in an organization cannot write code. They don't speak analytics. So they're kind of hanging out there without an obvious path forward. Today, the expert model of data science is ending, and we're helping bring that to an end. And every company now has the opportunity to become a data company, and they just need to know what to look for, make sure they're asking the right questions.
The right questions. Well, that's key, isn't it? How do you do that?
Well, number one is you have to stop creating additional complexity. And if there's one thing I see all the time, it's very complex environments. Our focus is to make more simplicity all over the organization. And at IBM Analytics, I say our mission is to make data simple and accessible to the world and to help drive a data-driven culture. But data science is easier than data culture. I think sometimes people forget that piece. So when I talk about a renaissance, that's what I mean. We believe data science and machine learning is finally becoming simple. It's going to do for the 21st century what the Industrial Revolution did for the 19th century.
No, I was having a good chat with some members of the audience a little bit earlier on. They might be forgiven for thinking, we've heard this before. What makes this different?
The economics are dramatically different. And I feel like we've all been there before, but the economics have changed the equation. Even 5 years ago, if you had $1 million to spend on a data project, you would spend 90% of that money on compute, storage, data acquisition, and there would be nothing left for the advanced analytics, the algorithm development. But the barriers are coming down. Just like in the card example I gave, once the barriers came down, Ford was able to modernize this with an assembly line, mass commercialization, and suddenly everybody could adopt the automobile. That's exactly where we are right now in data science. Our strategy in IBM is we want to make data science and machine learning really easy. We want to bring it to where the data is. Started earlier this year in February, we announced that we're bringing data science and machine learning to the mainframe. That was the first place, because that's where the world's most valuable data is. Last week, we announced a partnership with Hortonworks where we said we're going to bring that same data science and machine learning to Hadoop, which is the next large corpus of data that clients need to unlock.
So how then, specifically, is that going to change the way we do business?
It's going to change perceptions. It's going to change culture. And what I'd remind clients is IT no longer has to be the victim of business transformation. And that's really critical to remember. This is the chance to empower IT and make the Renaissance something that is I like to think of it as a geek empowerment.
I'm sure any geeks out there will be very, tech people, experts will be very pleased to hear that. Specifically then for today, and again, the questions were coming at me thick and fast this morning. Today specifically, what is today about, Rob?
We want to uncover a lot of truths about data. We want to debunk some common misconceptions that are out there. Mark Altshuler's got a great piece on what he calls the death of correlations, and it will be really interesting. And we've got 3 major announcements that we're making today that I want to be clear on. One is we are making data simple, and we have something that we call download and go, which is the ability to get to value in 15 minutes or less in any product. And we're actually bringing that to Db2 first. Even you, Kate, could install Db2 as of today, something we would have never thought of years ago.
Yeah.
Second is we're introducing offerings that help address GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation. The clock is running. Clients have to do something now. And you mentioned Y2K before. What's interesting to me is this is like the inverse of Y2K, where there's not a lot of hype, but there's enormous consequences to not doing something. And third, we're going to talk about data science and machine learning for all, how we make it really simple, providing the tools that you need for this renaissance. One thing that's unique about our approach is we say you choose the model, you choose the language, you use the framework of your choice. We're not going to enforce something, and we want to work with that in an open environment. But if I really think about these 3 announcements and what they recognize and point to, we are moving from a world of point solutions to platforms. And IBM is delivering a data science platform. We're delivering a governance platform. We're delivering a data management platform. And the thing that's great about platforms is platforms are timeless.
You've been very clear, very specific on that. What is it going to take then to bring this renaissance to fruition?
Everybody always wants a prescription. I figured that you would ask that. It reminds me of a story. So Mozart is late in his career from composing symphonies, and a young man walks up to him, he's like 20 years old, and he says, hey, Mozart, will you teach me how to compose symphonies? And Mozart looks at him and says, well, you're way too young. And he says, but Mozart, you started composing when you were 10 years old. And he said, yeah, but I wasn't walking around asking people how to do it. And I think that's kind of where we are with data right now. Unfortunately, it is not as easy as it should be. And we're trying to bring simplicity to this and what I call the 5 essential elements for data and analytics, which is 1, you need an intentional strategy around machine learning and data science. That will give you smarter predictions. 2 is you have to embrace open source. Open source is where all the innovation is in the community. 3, visualization. You need a strategy on how you discover and analyze data. 4th is unified governance. You need governance for compliance and for insights on your data. And 5th is you need hybrid data management, a way to free your data in a multi-cloud world, because we are moving to a multi-cloud world. Clients will have private clouds, public clouds, multiple public clouds. Our prescription is the Watson Data Platform on the IBM cloud, which makes it really simple.
Two things I'm going to pick up on, I've just written. So governance and freeing up data. But firstly, coming to this issue of the amount of data and how that is managed and made accessible, made simple.
You know, what most people don't realize is 80% of the world's data cannot be Googled. It's sitting behind a firewall. So for those watching this broadcast or in the room, it's your data. It's privately owned. It's behind your firewall. Interestingly, IBM probably manages most of that data today with our franchises around the mainframe, databases, content management. And what's unique to IBM is we can bring this technology, the data science and machine learning, to where the data is, which will be more efficient, faster, more productive. And today we're going to show you a variety of platforms and tools that enable you to do just that. Even my 14-year-old son can now do this, and we can barely get him out of bed most days.
Well, you say even your 14-year-old, they're pretty much hardwired, that younger generation. What about the more advanced in years of us?
I'm bringing this to even journalists like yourself, Kate. And I'm going to, don't believe anything I say.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to show you.
Go on then.
All right, let's do that. All right, so Kate, what's the first thing you notice here?
Hang on, let me have a little look. OK, so we've got...
Well, let me put it this way. First of all, you're not looking at PowerPoint.
Thanks, I'm glad you're going to clarify.
Because
yeah, okay.
PowerPoint is dead in the data era. Because in the data era, all you need is a analytical SaaS dashboard that's real time. So, all right, we're going to put you in a role here. Pretend that you're a marketer. You're at a company that's selling some type of product. What do you want to sell?
I'm going with smartphones because I'm looking at this. I'm under pressure now, I'm on test.
All
OK,
right.
so I'm going to go with smartphones.
OK, so your company sells smartphones. It looks like you've got a variety of other devices that you're selling too. Right now, we're sitting in a Cognos Analytics interface. Totally interactive. We can go wherever we want here. And what you can see here is that smartphones are selling pretty well.
Yeah.
What, any other observations?
Well, only that, so 2015 is the blue. For cameras, they sold really, really well. They fall down. But smartphones are way up. I mean, I'm going to make an assumption because maybe we use our smartphones as cameras as well. Is that why that would be the case? Or?
That is a logical assumption.
OK.
So, good one. Now, let's pretend you're gearing up for a new smartphone launch. And you want this to go well. It's your first year in the job. Your predecessor in this job is no longer with us.
Oh, gosh. OK.
So that did not work out well. I want to make sure you don't make the same mistakes.
All right.
So first thing we need to look at is, you know, like I said in the Ford example, history is always a great indicator. So why don't we look at what happened in the past? I'm just going to go over here, and I'm going to click on shipping status so we can look at the past. What's the first thing that you would notice here?
All right, well, obviously you've got these spikes. So that's in, what, April and September. You've got, September especially, huge spike in shipping delays. Why would that be?
So, yep, y-axis is shipping time. So you got two huge delays here. So, you know, if your predecessor would have said, oh, the issue is all the smartphones are delaying. But I'm going to ask you to go one step deeper, which is I'm just going to click on this to drill down. So again, interactive dashboard. Now I get a different view. Any thoughts here?
Then tells us that what, only 2 phones were affected by that. What's that, the A phone and the S phone? Is that right, with the
Correct.
colors? Yeah.
So your predecessor would have said the issue is all the phones. Because you're not using PowerPoint, it's very clear to you that there's actually 2 phones that are the problem. Like you said, the A phone and the S phone. So that's a bit of a problem that we need to figure out how we're going to deal with.
OK, I might need your advice on that.
Well, we probably need to do a little more investigation into why the shipping delays are happening. Do you know anything about investigations?
Just a tad.
OK.
I like investigations.
All right.
So what are we going to do?
Well, that's a much longer story. Maybe we should walk back to the desk.
OK. OK, so we're in the middle of our investigation. We don't have that much time for a long story. Let's go for the short version.
Short version.
Yes,
OK.
please. Yeah.
If you're that retailer, this is what happens today. Somebody calls up IT and says, hey, I need a real-time dashboard. And IT says, OK, let me go find out where the data is. Let me move a bunch of data around the organization. We'll build a SaaS application that will take us 3 to 6 months. Then we'll do it a few more months to test it, and we'll give you exactly what you need in 9 to 12 months.
OK, but I've got you breathing down my neck, which I don't want. So
right.
I don't have that time. So what do we do now?
Well,
I mean, how can this change with what you've just shown me?
That's the point of this renaissance in data science. You get away from PowerPoint. You have a real-time dashboard that's multi-cloud in nature, so you can deploy on private cloud or public cloud. And you saw with our tools, you can instantly provision the data that you need because you've done the right governance in advance. In 15 minutes, 15 minutes, you could provision a data warehouse based on Db2, which is remarkable. You can use a visualization tool. I showed you Cognos Analytics. And what was 6 to 9 months before is now less than a day.
Which, even for a bear of my small brain, is very, very impressive. I made the notes from governance and freeing up data, so can I bring you back onto that? And you've just mentioned it again. Governance, then, why is it so important?
Governance is often misunderstood. I'll just give you a simple analogy. What libraries do for books, we do for data. And governance is need for both compliance and for self-service insights. So later in the show today, we're going to go really deep on governance and how you apply that. OK, which would be very good for Nancy, my naughty Nancy over there, who's in the audience that I was talking to earlier. She's been asking me all sorts of tough questions. In terms of freeing up data, what is IBM doing there, freeing data? It's really what we've always done. It's nothing new. We've always believed in data first. We've always believed in open approaches to data because it's about putting clients back in control of their data. Many companies force you to use their model, their framework, their language. That's not what we're doing. We think data science should be open. We're about inventing more than just new technologies. We want to solve accessibility and actual impact of that technology.
Oh, and how is that going to help maybe just your average business evolve?
I mean, it's mainly opportunity. And I want everybody to think about that. Data as a competitive advantage becomes opportunity for you. And the term I like to use is you now have the chance to create celebrity experiences for your customers, where every customer, they no longer feel like they're part of a segment. They feel like you're talking to them specifically, just like you would treat a celebrity. It allows you to optimize how your business runs. The data science renaissance puts IT in the front, no longer a victim, and that's what's really new here. And one last thing I'd mention. Even a few years ago, I would go talk to companies and they'd say, I'm not a technology company, I'm in agriculture, or I'm in healthcare, or I'm in retail. Those days are over. Every company is becoming a technology company, and with what we're sharing today, IBM is enabling them to catch up in a fraction of the time. And some of you are behind, let's be honest. You're in a hole. And remember, the first rule of holes is if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And today is about starting the climb out. So really, the clear message, this renaissance, is affecting everyone and everything. Now, you're going to come back and help me with my smartphone problem so we can resolve that. Absolutely. I think so. Thank you very much, though, for the time being, ladies and gentlemen, Rob Thomas. And coming up next, we're going to take an in-depth look at a team sport that more and more people are playing when FasTrack continues after this.
Where's Jack?
He's on holiday. What do you need?
I need the temperature for pipe 5.
Ask the new guy.
The new guy?
Jack trained him.
Jack's guidance would be to maintain the temperature at negative 160 degrees Celsius.
That doesn't sound like Jack.
Actually, Jack would say, hey mate, just cool it to minus 160 and we're set. Good on ya.
Oh yeah, that's Jack.
back. In our next segment, we explore the natural habitat of the data scientist. Who are these unicorns? Have you caught glimpses of them lurking in the depths of your company? Are they capable of being domesticated, you ask? Is it possible for the average business person to speak their language? Of course it is. We'll be hearing more now from Hilary Mason. She's back in our studio with industry IT consultant and fellow data scientist Des Blanchfield to help us get to the truth then about these mythical creatures. Over to you, Des and Hilary.
Thank you, Kate. So Hilary, I think this is a great opportunity for us to debunk a few misconceptions around data scientists. Let's start with the unicorn. There have been data scientists for years, right? So why now are we obsessed with this unicorn perception, this mythical beast, this meme?
So I have to admit that I have never liked the unicorn metaphor for data scientists. It kind of makes us seem like, you know, we're magical creatures that aren't real human beings who actually work with you and are here in this room and online with us today. But when we think about what a data scientist actually does, it's not new. It's been around for a long time.
So what are the key skills that we need in a data scientist? And why won't we find them in this one person, this unicorn?
So I really break it down into 3 different capabilities. So one is the deep quantitative knowledge, the mathematics, the statistics, the ability to take data and build a model. The second is the technical fluency, the coding, software engineering, the ability to take your model and get it to where the data is, even if you're not a professional software engineer. And the third is the ability to ask the right questions. So there's no greater insult in data science than you have an elegant solution to an irrelevant problem. It is that ability to empathize, to sit down with someone else in the organization, to understand what they need to know, to figure it out, and then communicate it back to them. And so you don't see all of these skills at a master level in one person because they're so different. And that's why you need to create teams of people who together have that full spectrum of skill sets.
I'm glad we debunked it because I don't like the idea of wearing a unicorn horn. So how can data science be made more accessible across the organization?
Yeah, one of the interesting problems we run into is when people think data science is only the responsibility of the data science team. And yet we have these tools and these technologies that let us take the capabilities of the data scientist and push it out to anyone. And that's a really good thing. You don't just want your data scientist thinking about your data. Everybody should think about it in one way or another.
With that in mind, how do we empower this term we're hearing a lot of, the citizen data scientist? How do we make it so that more people can actually do data science?
So I expect we'll see in the next few years an expectation of sophisticated and fluent use of data science in every professional, the same way we all use email or use spreadsheets or write documents. We'll expect people to at least be able to create and look at dashboards to make those data-driven decisions. And that involves having both the technology in place, but also the culture that expects people to be able to use those tools. So it's both a technical and a human innovation, which is a theme, I think.
With that in mind, I mean, how do we operationalize data science as a concept across the organization then?
I mean, it's really taking that cultural attitude and scaling it, and also changing the way you think about new product, new business development efforts, so that there's always a data component as a first-class design consideration.
What are the functions or who should be included in this? I mean, how do we set organizations and people up for success and working together in the challenge of practicing data science?
I mean, it's really providing those cultural best practices, the tooling that everyone needs, and then the expectation, and to have people who can, as you do one project and it succeeds, say, oh, let's see that, let's do more of that. And so you really have people who are leaders, but are really bringing the whole organization up with them.
What are the types of tools across the organization we should be thinking about? I mean, we hear a lot about open source, but I think you'll agree that's not exactly the panacea exclusively. What are your thoughts around the types of tools, in particular open source,
tools are really important
to enable people to do data science?
So I'm a huge fan of open source. It's where a lot of the really exciting innovation and tooling is happening. It moves very quickly. but it doesn't provide everything you need in the sense that there are two problems here. One is that data scientists very much like to use the best tool for the job, and that means you may have a set of different open source or proprietary tools to solve one problem. The second thing is that open source doesn't usually consider data in the context of the enterprise, and so when you think about data governance, security, access controls, shared definitions of what you mean in your data. So how do we define concepts like an active customer, right? We should share those across the organization. Those tools don't provide that collaboration framework.
So we've talked about how data science is becoming a team sport. So now we're going to show a brief demonstration of how we're going to put that into practice, I understand.
Sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Let's head over to the FasTrack lab. Alexander, thank you very much for being our driver today. So, Hillary, let's have a look at what data science as a team sport looks like, in particular on IBM's Data Science Experience Platform, aka DSX. So we're going to demo how you could build a model for predicting supply chain delays using example data from the IBM blockchain.
Sounds like fun.
So the blockchain, as we all know, blockchain is a ledger, ledger platform. So let's now look at how we would model this. Before we do that, though, let me just quickly add a couple of notes. So DSX was designed by data scientists to let teams easily collaborate and operationalize data science to deliver faster insights, better business insights, and at scale. Now, when we log into DSX, you're immediately presented with a landing page. And on that landing page, we see projects that we publish ourselves. We see projects that are available to us in other collaborative platforms. We see the breakdown of collaborators that have access to projects that we're working on and we might otherwise. And by the way, under the tools menu, you'll see that your favorite open source tools like RStudio and Jupyter Notebooks are actually integrated seamlessly as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, I should also mention that there are community tutorials integrated into the platform as well. And if I know you are like me, we like to publish our own findings and learnings and share them. And I should also mention that the DSX platform is also available not just on the cloud, but on-premise as well. In other words, behind your firewall. So let's take a look at data exploration. So I'm sure you'll agree with me that the first step in any data science project is data exploration.
Yes.
So in this demo, we have example data for shipment volumes and weight, delays, distance shipped, weather, lead times, carrier performance, etc. Now, I should mention that we're using the Brunel visualization library here, which you may or may not know is an open source project from IBM.
Of course.
One of my favorites. Now, here we have our delays distribution data overlaid on a map of the world. And as we can see, as we explore how the delays depend on origin of country, we're going to select a few of these countries and just look at source and destination and see what impacts may have. Now, on the map here, we can see heat mapped that Canada, the US, China, and Australia in particular are experiencing some delays in shipping. Now, in a real-world scenario, a supply chain specialist would ideally look into why this is the case.
Do we have any here?
Well, we might not do that today. We've got a short amount of time. Okay, so let's just jump straight into building a model. Let's build and train our model. So to build a model, you can actually use the guided process within DSX. The steps to do that are select our data, prepare, train, and evaluate. Pretty common to both of us. So first we select the data sets. Now DSX uses machine learning to automate the data transformation process for us. Next we train the data model. So let's choose the type of model. In this case, probably familiar to you more than anyone in the world, we're going to choose regression.
You always start with a regression.
Indeed. Then let's select the delay attribute, which we'd like to predict. Now, DSX suggests the algorithm which matches the type of classification you select, which makes life much easier for us. Then you can compare the results and select the best performing model to use. Now, here you can see the trained model for our shipment delay predictor. Now, with one click, Alexander is going to publish it to a REST API endpoint for us. Now, here's our supply chain predictive model in action. In our example, shipment delay app, quote unquote, we can select various parameters. So let's have a look at in this case, we'll adjust the weather condition, let's say, and we'll see what effect different types of weather has on delays on shipping. So let's start with clear weather. That's a pretty easy one to start with as a baseline, and let's see what our model predicts. Now, as you can see, it's predicted an almost on-time delivery, less than a day's delays, which should come as no surprise to anyone, right? Let's now change the weather to foggy and see what our model predicts. Now, we've got confirmation here that our model has learned the effect of foggy weather and has predicted delays, and in this case, we've predicted around about 1.2 days delaying. So let's just quickly recap what we've seen through our quick tour of the IBM data science platform here. From the point of logging in, we can see that we can share and collaborate our own projects and projects that other collaborators have shared with us. We also saw that you can use your favorite open source tools like RStudio and Jupyter Notebooks. We saw that machine learning is now both accessible and easy to use, which is a great thing. We saw the DSX platform give us a guided tour through building our model and automatically and quickly deploy our model for use in an app, which is a great outcome, as I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah.
You'll also recall that DSX can be deployed both in the cloud and on premises, which is especially useful when about 80% of our data now, apparently, and as Rob said earlier, sits behind the firewall. And it's, as you said earlier on, it's important to bring machine learning to where your data is.
Absolutely.
And now we can do that, by the way, with DSX Local behind our firewall, hosted on premises. And I just heard yesterday that for even more data science flexibility, IBM recently announced that DSX is available in IBM Power Systems. So we've seen this zero to hero experience in a very short period of time, in a number of minutes, where we've taken data, put it in a model, trained that model, and predicted some data. So that's how DSX is making data science a team sport. And as you've just seen, you don't have to be a unicorn to play. So with that, I'm going to throw back to you, Kate.
Hilary, thank you very much indeed. I was paying close attention to see if I can learn a lot from my smartphone problem. A little later, Rob's going to come back and test me. Something tells me the surprises are just going to keep coming with my next guest as well, who is here to tell us why one of the standard measuring tools of data analysis, the correlation, is dangerous to your company's health. First, this brief message.
Who's a new guy?
They call him the Whisperer.
The Whisperer? Why do they call him the Whisperer?
He talks to planes.
He talks to planes.
Watch this. Hey, Watson, what's avionics telling you?
Maintenance records and performance data suggest replacing capacitor C4.
Not bad. What's with the coffee maker?
Sorry, we are not on speaking terms.
So we are back on Fast Track with a very special guest now, General Manager, IBM Business Analytics, Mark Altshuler. Welcome, Mark. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So Hilary and Des then were talking about the different model now. It's so much more of a team sport. What are you seeing in the business analytics space?
So really, three things that we're seeing. The first is the emergence of this citizen analyst. The citizen analyst is a person who maybe took 1 or 2 statistics courses in college or university, but it's also a person that's come into the workplace that continues to learn in the workplace. The second thing is around data. Rob talked about 80% of the data being behind the firewall. I'm here to tell you the other 20% is really important too. The signal of what's driving your business may be in the market data or some combination of your data and the market data. Social data comes to mind, weather data comes to mind as 2 great examples. And the third is access to the right tools. We have these very advanced analytical tools that these business users, these citizen analysts, have access to.
So how best to leverage that capability then?
So before I get into exactly leveraging that capability, there's something you alluded to, something I have to do first,
Oh, go on.
which is I have to kill the correlation. Now, there are data scientists in our audience. There are data scientists on the live stream. They cannot believe that a business guy is finally acknowledging that correlations are dangerous and they need to go away. They've used humor to try to make this point to us. Things like the divorce rate in Maine is positively correlated to margarine consumption, right? Or US crude oil imports and chicken consumption. So they've tried to use humor to make this point to us, and we just haven't gotten it, right? We dismiss it.
You're saying it's dangerous. I mean, some elements of correlation, I mean, some part of them could be causal, or is it just we've got to weed out the nonsensical ones?
Well, that's where it gets dangerous. We kind of trust ourselves to get in there and weed out those nonsensical correlations. But let me give you an example. And Kate, this might even be something you reported on yourself. There's a story I caught about 10 days ago on the news, and the article I read, it was called, "Could French Fries Be Killing You?" Now, by the way, before anyone gets alarmed, just stay with me here. The study had a really good sample size, 4,400 people, ages 45 to 79, so really good statistical sample there. And they looked at how often people are eating fried versus unfried potatoes. Now, the study found that if you had fried potatoes more than 2 times per week, you would more than double your risk of death. But this is just a correlation study. They didn't actually find a link between eating fried potatoes and a higher mortality rate.
Yeah, I'm with you, because as a journalist, I would be looking beyond the story, but I would make some extrapolation maybe to say, well, look, if someone's inclined to eat fried food, fried potatoes twice a week, they're more likely to be sort of doing other less healthy things during the week as well. So is there a correlation to be had, partially even?
Well, so now you're getting into actually a pattern. And that's where we need to take things. It's not about finding the single thing, the single one element that drives another element. It's about really finding that pattern. And you start to talk about it. Are you getting those French fries with a bacon double cheeseburger? Are you leading an active versus inactive lifestyle? Is there something genetically that's involved related to this mortality risk? But it's not going to be a direct linkage between eating fried potatoes and a higher mortality rate. There is a pattern that's occurring to it. And in fact, there's patterns.
Okay, so you're saying that that's what's dangerous because they're not even part of the answer per se?
They may not be.
Yeah.
Maybe, may not be. We don't know based on that study.
So how can everyone avoid the trap then?
Well, let me actually, to do that, why don't we show you how we can avoid that trap? Let me take you over.
Oh, we've got another demonstration.
Yeah.
Marvelous. Okay, let's go over to the lab. Now, as you can see, helping us out, we have IBM Director, Business Analytics Marketing Lead, Caroline Seymour. Hello to you. Now, I was interested in this because you told me we were going to do a bike demonstration. I did wonder if that's because you know that I like my cycling in London. I commute everywhere. I remember reading, now tell me if this is wrong, by 2030, I remember reading, by 2030, cycle sharing and car sharing could account for as much as 15 to 20% of passenger miles globally.
That's right.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that is fascinating, isn't it? And it shows us then, I mean, I suppose you're going to show us how analytics can help us start predicting, drilling down into that.
Yeah, and let me tee this up a little bit. So there's bike sharing services that are out there. The example we're going to use is related to a company called Motivate that runs a number of these operations throughout North America. They're also here in Europe, I understand. And these businesses basically are the type of thing where you go up to a bike stand, you have your membership card or your credit card, you swipe it, you take the bike, you drive somewhere, you drop the bike off. These companies are deeply based on analytics. It's all about having the right number of bikes at the right stations to maximize the operations. When it's a rainy day, it's easy, right? Or when it's bad weather, it's really easy. Their demand can drop tenfold. But when it's a really nice day to really maximize the opportunity, it's all about the data. So Caroline, why don't you show us?
Yes, of course. So, let me take you to Chicago. And I'm going to play the role of an operations lead for a bike sharing company. And it's my priority, as it is for my customers, to have bikes in the right place at the right time. Now, you can see here in the dashboard the communities of Chicago and if I click here, the number of rides. I can also look at that by stations. And so I can actually quickly get a sense of where people have been using our bikes. And now what I can do is switch my view, and I can see now ridership by community over time. And what you see here are some peaks and some troughs. And they seem to relate to certain months of the year. And if you look a bit closer down here, you will see they relate to winter months. And so there seems to be a relationship between the ridership over the seasons.
Yeah.
Is that not a correlation I spy there? Sorry, I mean, are we just not making what, Mr. Altshuler, did you not just say they're dangerous?
So good catch.
Yeah.
What we're looking at so far
yeah.
is a rearview mirror, right? We're looking at what's gone on so far in the business. What we haven't got into, other than guessing a little bit, is why it's happening. So that's actually where Caroline's going to take us next.
Okay.
Why?
Absolutely. And so what we saw was not a surprise, but it does actually raise a question as to whether or not there are other factors of weather that impacts ridership. So what I'm going to do is download some weather data. And immediately what you can see here is that there is a correlation between temperature and ridership. And now I can make my decision based upon what I see here. But maybe there are some other factors that I have not considered. So let's use my tool here to be able to discover additional hidden patterns maybe within my data. So now I can see what drives number of rides, and wow, what you see here is the fact that temperature is not the only factor that we have to consider. There are several other factors and attributes that are not even thought of, like humidity, as well as dew point. And then what we see here in the spiral chart, we actually see the dots, and the closer the dots are to the center, the more these attributes will influence the outcome. Now that I can see that humidity, temperature, and dew point are all factors, I now want to be able to see what exactly the temperature is and what humidity. So I can actually go and take a look at my predictive model that's been generated for me, and I can actually see some groupings here. And let's take a look at this one. You can see here that if with a combination of average temperature of 59, as well as also the average humidity of 57 to 78, I can actually see that I have an anticipated ridership of about 12,800.
And let me jump in here for a moment. So Kate, what you're looking at is, and you've noticed when we were talking about correlations, we kept talking about a single answer, as French fries causing mortality. When we're looking at the model, I kept using the word, not pattern, patterns, plural. Every single one of these is a viable pattern, right? So think about when people are doing marketing. It's not just about having one customer profile, there's multiple.
They would have
customers.
multiple. Okay, interesting. All right, tell me more.
So,
I mean, I'm guessing because from this, you would then be able to pick up a marketing plan much better, much more accurately, in terms of a demand plan even.
Yeah,
would that
exactly.
be right? Yeah.
And that's actually where we want to take this next is, we know what's going on.
Yeah.
We know why it's happening, right? We now have the patterns in terms of why it's happening. So what will happen next, and what should we do about it?
So let's take a look. So based on these factors, so humidity, dew point, temperature, and where this will have the greatest impact, I now can predict demand over the course of the next few days. So let me actually take a look here, and what you can see is the predicted number of rides based on the weather forecast data that I've brought in, and I'm looking at it over 3 days. But let me just change this to, say, 10 days. And select go. And here we have now my forecast in the Chicago area for the next 10 days.
And by the way, when we look at this forecast, what is it doing behind the scenes? It's sitting on top of a data science experience model, leveraging machine learning, and doing a real-time call to the weather forecast to be able to predict that demand forecast.
Which is just brilliant. It is fascinating.
Well, let me show you more.
Go on.
So what I can see now is, I'm looking at Chicago here. So what I can do is look at my predicted demand by community, and you can see my different communities, and I can actually just select over here the days, so I can look at the different rides that I need by community. But I can also take another view and look at it from demand trend. And what I'm looking at is the predicted demand for the top 10 communities. And so what I can see here is in certain communities, I can see a decrease in demand. But in other communities, I can see an increase. So now I need to think about allocating bikes across my communities. And so I may need to move bikes from one community to another community. Before I do that, though, I want to find the optimal solution for the supply of bikes that I need in each community. And so what you see here are my fleet size and bike station. And I can modify the fleet size because maybe, just maybe, I've got new bikes, I've got bikes in repair, and I can change the capacity at each of the stations. So basically, just in case I've got added capacities. So let me then just optimize. And so what you see, here we go, is the optimal solution that is being found for me. And so this is automatically optimizing the supply of bikes by community and station to meet the expected demands of my customers based on the data that we have.
And this is their real data. Those peaks and valleys you see, that's the weekend, right? The weekend, all of a sudden, the pattern of where people are is shifting dramatically, and they have to be able to move those bikes around. When the weather's shifting, they have to be able to move the bikes around. That's what this solution is doing. So we told you what was going on, we told you why it was going on, we told you what would happen next, and we told you what you ought to do about it. For us, it's about getting people out of those rear view mirror dashboards that are always looking at history and becoming forward-looking.
And looking forward. Thank you so much for bringing data analytics to life. I could sit and play with that all day. Thank you very much indeed. There is much more ahead, so stay tuned. We're back in 60 seconds. Thank you.
I like Russo. His on-off splits are the best here.
Yeah, but his offensive win shares didn't even break 4.
Come on, check out that stop and pop.
What do you think?
My trade-off analytics indicate no one creates more space on offense. This allows him to nail a jumper from a densely populated urban area.
What you're trying to say is from way downtown?
I am still learning.
I can see that.
Okay, we're back on Fast Track with Rob Thomas again. He's about to test me. It was amazing, actually, how much you can drill down in terms of temperature, humidity, all those different factors.
It's pretty amazing what you can do once you get outside of the norm, right?
Yeah.
And, right set of tools, right mindset, right attitude, right culture, it makes a big difference. And now I was thinking, let's come back to our smartphone challenge that we were talking about earlier.
So we left off then, business was booming. We had shipping delays, though, occurring at the time of the big phone launch.
That's right. We were looking at Watson Analytics, and recall the first step was we had to identify the problem. Now we need to understand why this is happening. And all you need to do is type a question.
So
however you want to ask it.
Well, there's lots of questions I probably could have. Where am I going to type it? Oh, right up there.
Use the keyboard, Kate. I highly recommend that.
Where it says ask a question.
You're good.
All right, I'd like to know sorry everybody, there, shipping delays. Okay, so can I press return?
Just ask.
Okay, where are there shipping delays? That's what I want to know.
Now, you see what happens. It comes back and it tells you there's a lot of possible answers to that question. These are somewhat relevant. I'm going to suggest we go with the most relevant. So I'm just going to click right here. We're going to find the most relevant answer to the question that you asked.
Okay.
So this is coming up. So first of all, what do you see? Any reaction?
Well, you've got shipping delays starting from 1 going up to 10. 10's obviously the most severe, I imagine, then with, that's the darkest color, and looking at it.
Let's zoom in a little bit. You know your European geography.
Yeah, this is going to tell, oh, there we go, all the names are. Anyway, so I can see we've got UK, obviously, Germany, Poland, the darkest, Finland.
See, now I would expect France and Germany to be on the darker side, large markets, big demand. Poland, however, is surprising to me because we didn't have so much demand last year, and now for some reason we're seeming to have trouble predicting demand for that. What would it be like if we could shape the demand, if we could create demand?
Well, how would you do that?
We would just find out who the most likely candidates are. We would begin to create personalized offers for them. It goes back to that idea I shared with you about celebrity experience, and we would only look to people that are most likely to purchase.
And that sounds like we're trying to read their minds. How do you do that?
You're right. We're actually expert mind readers. Not exactly, but amazing. Data does give you the power to become a mind reader if you use it appropriately.
And that's the point, yeah. Okay, and we're not going to go over to the other side. I'm just going to carry on. Rob, thank you very much indeed. We will be digging. I thought we were going to pick up on that, but we're not. So you're going to come back and show me how we read minds shortly.
We're going to do that in a bit.
Thank you very much. We will be digging a little deeper then into that truth about data, and it might take a surprising turn. Imagine then that you are standing in the world's largest public library. The shelves on your left provide access to every fact, every byte of data ever created. In order to make use of that extensive catalogue, you must be able to understand and comply with the regulations on the shelves to your right, which are constantly shifting and changing. So make no mistake that is where we are, at the juncture of insight and compliance that's empowered by unified governance. So what happens then? What happens now? Who better to ask than Vice President and Chief Data Officer for IBM Analytics, Dr. Seth Dobrin. Welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Kate.
I love that metaphor of the library. There is another layer, though, to it. In terms of what IBM is doing in addressing and creating, hopefully, a single unified catalog.
Yeah, so IBM offers IGC as a download and go package. And what IGC does is it really provides you the ability to form a catalog or to build a catalog of your data. And if you look at what it does, it's really about democratizing your data, making your data available to everyone, right? Providing access to that data in a searchable fashion, and understanding it and giving people in the enterprise the ability to look for data, explore data, and understand data to get them insights, all in a way that's compliant with regulations.
Yes, I mean, I like that. As a journalist, I want that compliance in there because some of it does worry me to a degree. If we go back to basics then for people, explain to us unified governance.
Yeah, so unified governance is more than just who gets access, right? It's about making data make sense. It's data management, data security, content management, entitlement, lineage. So truly understanding the whole portfolio of data in the context of the individuals.
But there are two sides, then, of unified governance.
Absolutely. There's the side of governance for compliance, being compliant with regulatory regulations, and there's governance for insights. So how do I use governance to accelerate insights in a company? And that's a shift in most companies. Most companies see governance as a roadblock. governance can be an accelerant for innovation.
It can facilitate. Is it easily implementable?
Absolutely, and it's already happening. In fact, we have a client who's already doing this, and he's here with us.
And you're going to introduce him now, I think.
And I'm going to introduce him now. All right, well, I'm pleased to be joined by the Chief Executive Architect of ING, Henrik van Bruggen. Welcome, Henrik. Interested to talk to you today about what you're doing at ING and how ING is using governance. Most enterprises view governance as kind of a bolt-on process, right? Kate and I were just talking about how enterprises see governance as a roadblock, right? ING has implemented governance as a core mission. What does this really get you guys?
Yeah, to answer that question, I have to go back a little bit in time. It's exactly like you described just before. We were thinking about big data 4 or 5 years ago, but beside the potential value that we saw, we also addressed some concerns. How to find that data that we have, especially when volume is growing. How to make it secure. And also how to make sure that we can see where data is flowing into the organization. So from that perspective, we developed together, and it was a joint exercise of IBM and ING, we established the data lakes. And for us, the data lake is key to get all the data in and to make it findable. And so what makes it important for a catalog is that you have metadata. And so that you have an understanding what is in, and that you have a kind of index that tells you where to find data based on an Esperanto that everybody understands. So that's, for us, the natural way to be confronted with data governance from that perspective, just to find it and to control it.
Yeah, and you mentioned metadata in that. So what role does metadata play? This, and you started talking on it a little bit, but why is it important for the metadata platform to be based on an open source?
Yeah, first of all, metadata is as much as important as the data itself. It tells you where it came from, it tells you what the classification is of data, and it tells you how it refers to a dictionary. Why open source? There is 2 reasons for that. First of all, when we want to create a catalog that contains all the data in ING, we will face multiple technologies out of multiple vendors. And that's the reality of ING. And so what we are looking for is a kind of catalog and a virtualization layer that can handle multiple technologies from multiple vendors. And in our thinking, open source, and that's also recognized by IBM, open source is the perfect way to deal with that. So others can join us as well in creating that capability of virtualization, finding data, whatever the data source is.
Yeah, and even before last week when we made the announcement around Hortonworks, right? Hortonworks and IBM and ING were all working together around this project.
Yeah, and I hope that many will follow that initiative.
Yeah.
That's one. The other aspect of why open source for ING is also important. We see that good engineers want to be where open source is. They want to work on open source projects. And we definitely need good engineers as ING, but also for this particular case where we want to create that virtualization layer on top of our data.
Right, and just like Hillary and Des were talking earlier about data scientists want to work in open source,
exactly.
The data engineers you want to work in open source as well.
Definitely.
And so, how is implementing governance as a core principle, really, how has that transformed ING?
Yeah, in different ways. Given that everybody wants to find data, data quality became vital for everybody. Not just the compliance department, but when you really want to have access to good data with good quality, everybody came aware that we need governance on that. So the metadata tells all about the quality of the data, etc. So really, like I said, it came quite natural to have a strict governance on your data to make sure that data quality level is quite high.
Great. And so, ING has really changed how it operates. Do you consider ING to be a financial company at this point or a tech company at this point?
That's a good question. First of all, I'm a technical guy. I love technology, and I have a great time in ING. So maybe that at least reveals that there is a lot of technology in ING that makes it quite exciting to work for. I think we're both, to be honest. We recognize the value of financial assets and capabilities, but the same for technology capabilities going forward are as much needed as well. And I think I can expect, I hope, to see that within 2 years, when you invite a banker here, that he or she will introduce herself in a black T-shirt saying, "I love IT." Because I truly think that banking as such is indeed a merge, like we said, team sports, it's a merge of business and IT, and I don't think in 2 years' time we will still make that differentiation between the two.
All right, so when we see you again in 2 years, you'll have a hoodie, a T-shirt, and sneakers on, right?
I promise you.
Yeah? All right, great. Well, we're running out of time, and I really appreciate you coming here to Munich from Amsterdam to visit with us. And you heard Henrik really kind of talked about metadata and the importance of lineage and the importance of understanding where your data is coming from. And that really plays into the next factor, which is around GDPR. And how does GDPR really enable your business, the future of your business? Thanks, Henrik.
Thanks.
The video you've just seen ended with the question, are you ready? And no matter what your answer is, you're going to want to hear from our next guest, Senior Principal at Promontory, one of the world's truest experts on GDPR, John Bowman. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I work for Promontory, which is an IBM company. For the last 3 years, I've been working in data protection and privacy consulting, including a lot of GDPR work. Previously, I was the UK's lead negotiator on the GDPR, so I attended all the working groups in Brussels which drafted this particular regulation.
Great. So up until now, companies have been dealing with a lot of disparate rules. With GDPR, there'll be a harmonization of these rules across all of Europe. You know, GDPR is 336 days away. It's becoming real, and still, there's a lot of confusion. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you hear when you're out talking with clients?
Well, I think one of the biggest conceptions is around whether there's going to be a grace period after the go-live date, which is the 25th of May, 2018. We can see there's 336 days left. But actually, we are in the grace period already. It started over a year ago. The legislation provided for a 2-year transition period, so as far as businesses are concerned, they should be looking to prepare for their GDPR implementation if they haven't done so already.
So the countdown clock, like we saw, is literally ticking away.
It really is.
Yeah. So, you know, misconception two, or you know, the second misconception is, are all companies affected by GDPR? I think some companies, depending on where they are or what business they're in, think they're not.
Well, some companies which are outside of the European Union may think that the GDPR has nothing to do with them, but they could possibly be, they may not be so right about that, because if they are processing the data of people in the European Union, or they have processing activities in the European Union, then it's very likely that they will be within the scope of the GDPR and therefore will need to comply.
And what do you mean by processing?
Processing can mean anything. Data processing could mean storage, analytics work, transferring data from one place to another. So the actual definition of data processing is quite broad.
Okay, good. And so, you know, the other misconception is that UK will be exempt, right? So with Brexit, you know, does GDPR still comply with, you know, still?
Well, only yesterday, Her Majesty the Queen announced in the Queen's speech to Parliament that, that the government will be implementing the GDPR in the United Kingdom. So it will apply to UK companies, in particular in the context of their processing in the United Kingdom. But of course, many companies will process data of European Union citizens or residents anyway. So they'll be caught by the rules whichever way you look at it.
Right, because you said earlier, it has the scope is broader than the EU. It's any companies that are doing business with an individual in the EU, which includes employees and customers, right?
Indeed, it can include customers, employees, the data subjects. They certainly have enhanced rights under the GDPR, and that's something which the companies need to address during their implementation programs.
So what are 3 things that companies can do today to prepare for GDPR?
Well, I think one of the key elements is ensuring that your key decision makers in an organization have buy-in, and you've got that buy-in from them. That requires resource, it requires funding, but also a kind of change of mindset. So that's really important because privacy is an important concept. It's a fundamental right under European Union law, and therefore that businesses need to think of it through that particular lens.
Yeah, and so, this sounds really intense, right? What's the upside for companies and as they prepare for GDPR?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for companies to get their houses in order, to know where their data is, to work out what their data transfers are, how they transfer data across their organizations and in and out of the European Union, and indeed to third parties as well. So that's something which they can get, which will be benefit to those companies in particular.
Yeah, and while we're here, right, IBM can help fast-track your data, right? We offer a breadth of capabilities, flexibility for substitutions, new package for new platform of unified governance, and there's governance for insights and governance for compliance, as well as services such that you offer at Promontory, that we offer through our consulting services, and that through some of our partner consulting services offer as well.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd agree with that.
So that wraps up the discussion. Thanks, John. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you very much indeed. I am somewhat more reassured now. I'm very interested to learn more about GDPR. We've been hearing then about the right balance of insight and compliance, importantly, can then create new assets for your business. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the biggest balancing act of all, your company's data management system. Stay with us.
Hey, Dad, come meet the new guy.
The new guy? What new guy?
I hired some help. He really knows his wine.
This is the new guy?
Hello, my name is Watson.
You know wine, huh?
I know that you should check Vineyard Block 12.
Block 12?
My analysis of satellite imagery shows it would benefit from decreased irrigation.
I was wondering about that.
Easy boy. Nice doggy.
What do you think?
Not bad.
Welcome back. With the exploding amount of data then being generated every day, it's no wonder many perhaps claim data as the new currency of our world economy. Here to help answer some of our questions about data is Vice President IBM Analytics Development, Dinesh Nirmal. So let's start with how this data is being generated, first of all.
Yeah. So the data is generated by all of us, right? Whether it's social data, you're using it in Facebook, you're using Twitter. It could be the transactional data where you're using your credit card, you're purchasing a loan, or it could be the IT data, right? So all this data is coming together, and there is about 2.5 exabytes of data that's being generated every day. We used to talk about gigabytes and petabytes. It has gone to exabytes.
And how does the growth then affect all of us, I guess, everybody here?
Right. So once you have that kind of data, the question comes, how do you create insights out of that data, right? How do you serve your customers better? So if you're a developer, how do you infuse machine learning into that? Or if you're an IT person, right, how do you take the structured data, unstructured data, and create value out of it? So if you're a business analyst, how do you create reporting out of it? So it all comes down to how do you create value out of that data or unlock that data.
And then let's talk about that then. When I woke up, I don't know how many other people were in the hotel that we're in here, but we've got this. Just talk to me about all this information that I had in my hotel this morning.
Yeah, so it's about, I go back to unlocking the data or freeing your data, whereby which, how can we serve our customers better? So let me give you a small example. How many of you, let me just interact with our audience. How many of you flew here? Can you raise your hands?
That's
a pretty
quite
good
a number, yes.
And a lot of these folks, how many of you had a mobile boarding pass? But the challenge, Kate, today is that the mobile boarding pass is static. So let's say your flight is delayed, your gate changed, it never changes, right? But think about it. If your flight is delayed, and all of a sudden, if that device could take your preferences, likes, dislikes, and tell you, OK, flight is delayed, but Kate likes to get home faster, or she likes to go to the closest bar to have a drink, and generate some kind of a coupon, all of a sudden you have a happy Kate instead of unhappy Kate. So that's what I mean by unlocking the data to help and serve our customers better.
And what would be stopping that from becoming a reality for every app?
Right. So it's siloed. The data is siloed within enterprises. So let me give you another example where we have been working with a banking customer. So if you look at it, the credit card transactions come from one system. Your savings, your checking comes from different system. Your credit score comes from different system. So how do you make sure you integrate all this and create real-time analytics to provide value? So the challenge is that how do you, the siloed system, how do you bring it all together? So that's a challenge.
Which comes back to freeing your data.
Exactly, unlocking the value of the data.
OK, so let's hear a little bit more about that now then, this freeing your data business.
Well, thank you, Kate. So we have two guests today with us. Our first guest is Roland Velasco, who is the portfolio executive at T-Systems. And we also have Caleb Curry, who's a software developer. So let me start with you, Roland. We talked about the complexity of the data, the kind of data that we are dealing with, and creating value out of that data. And yesterday we talked about IoT data, where you're using in connected cars and other things. But one that stood out to me is the construction example you gave me, where you're using IoT kind of data to pull data from the construction. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, indeed. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, indeed, our customers have many sources of new sources of data. And while we are doing IoT applications with connected car or connected home, we have discovered a new industry where you wouldn't expect IoT applications in the first view. So when you look at the building, house building or industry building industry, they have lots of expensive devices on their construction sites. And as an example, room dryers are nearly on every construction site to make sure that the progress of house building is advancing quickly. So they need to be quick, but also need to know what these devices are doing, how much power they consume, and so on. So we have combined applications like geofencing, like predictive maintenance, and also the statistics of power usage for creating of billing data into an IoT analytics application, which is also supported by a cooperation with our mother company, Deutsche Telekom, with a 5G network. So we have built intelligent devices equipped with GPS and lots of sensors, which send their data via 5G back to the central data center, T-Systems data center, highly secure, where we do all the analytics and support the renting company and the house building, the building company, both to have transparency about the usage, about the cost, and the status of the device, if it gets, if it's in the real right shape, if it's still on site. So with geofencing, we can make sure that there's an alarm if it leaves the authorized zone, and so on.
Well, that's really, really exciting. I mean, the fact that you can take the data from the construction site, stream the data, and be able to, make predictions on it. So that's really good. With that kind of data complexity, we also need simplicity. So let me introduce Caleb Curry, who's a software developer, not just a software developer, but who's been working with the data offerings and is a YouTube sensation. I mean, I learned yesterday that you have a big fan club.
Yeah, I have about 800 videos on programming, databases, how to remove permanent marker from a whiteboard, I mean, you name it. But I got started. I was reading a book on databases. There was a section on database design. I was like, reading it, this makes no sense. So I looked at it. This is basically like German to me. Like, that's how I feel here. But I picked it up as a challenge. I was going to learn the material well enough to teach someone else. And that was how I birthed my first YouTube series.
Wow. And you're new to DB2, right?
Yeah, brand new. And as a fun fact, this is my first time out of the United States.
So welcome to Germany.
Thank you.
I was asking him if he wanted to have a Hefeweizen, but I wasn't sure he's old enough. But so Caleb, I mean, you are the perfect person to tell us if we have been successful as IBM in simplifying, our developer community edition, for example.
Yeah, and I have a little demo that will show how simple it is to start with non-structured data.
Show us.
Yeah, certainly. Okay. All right, so how many people here are developers? And the rest of you want to be developers. All right, so I'm completely new with DB2, but I'm showing you how easy it is to pick up because even I was able to pick it up. One of the cool new features is support for non-structured data. So when I'm talking about non-structured data, I'm talking about data that doesn't necessarily fit the column structure defined in some table. So that can come up if you don't know the structure of your data ahead of time or if the structure of your data is changing over time. The great part is DB2 can support both structured and non-structured data, so you don't need a database for one and a database for the other. So DB2 can do both. So when I think of DB2, I think of Db2 and 1. So one of the most popular ways to represent non-structured data is with JSON. So this is JSON. We're going to be using this throughout the example. I'm going to try and throw this into a Db2 database and get that data back out. And hopefully nothing catastrophic happens. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go over to Data Server Manager. Now, Data Server Manager is your one tool to do everything with your database. You can monitor, you can administer, you can even run SQL right in here. So you can see here I have a create table statement, and it has one column of type blob. Now, this is to store binary data, and the reason that is because the JSON gets stored in a binary format known as binary JSON. That allows the database to work with the data a lot faster. So we're going to run that. So we created the table, so how do we actually go about putting data into that table? Where you're going to use a built-in function called JSON to BSON, and you're just going to pass in your data as an argument. So we'll paste that in there and run that. And it works. But the cool part here is that you can actually go and change the structure of your data. So I can go in here and add a key, and this will be the equivalent of a column in structured data. So the reason that's cool is because with structured data, you can't just go add columns. It's not that easy. But in here, if we run this, you can see it still works, which is pretty sweet. So we got the data in there. How do we go about actually getting the data back out? Well, I have a select statement here, which will convert the binary JSON back to JSON. We just pass in the column as an argument, run that. That will give us a result set. And there's our data. So you can see how easy it is to work with diverse data types inside of DB2. It's good for the developer because it's way less we have to worry about. It's good for the DBA because it's scalable, less you have to worry about and manage. And they just came out with the free version where you can try out all these delicious features for free. So if you didn't start downloading that like 5 minutes ago, like, go download it. Like, what are you still here? There's nothing left to see except like 25 demos. But other than that, go download DB2 and give it a try. It'll make your life a lot easier.
Caleb, this was great. So even though I'm not a developer, I can see that it's simpler now to manage all different types of data.
Yeah, it supports JSON, XML, graphs, and works with all the major programming languages, C#, C++, Java, all the other, PHP, Python, Perl.
Caleb told me yesterday that it's so simple, Dinesh, even you can do it. So, I mean, then I knew this has to be pretty straightforward. But, one feature that you mentioned that stood out to me was the blue acceleration.
That's right.
Why?
So blue acceleration essentially allows you to do fast analytics on your data. It's because it brings your data into memory and stores it by column. So you have all the data you need all in one location. And if you run out of memory, it spills over to disk. So it's really, really reliable. And yeah, that's basically it.
I can see this is a good way to free your data and get the business leaders access to real-time reports and insights on the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, another feature is HTAP. I mean, HTAP gives you the functionality where you can do real-time analytics on transactional data, which is also great because now, you get good of both worlds, right?
Yeah, with HTAP, you basically get the benefit of blue acceleration, but without the harm when it comes to transactional data.
Yeah, and the other thing, Roland, is the freedom of location, right? We were talking about that yesterday, where how do we make sure as customers move into cloud, you have the availability and you have the freedom to get the data where you want. And we also have the Bluemix Lift service, which allows high-speed transfer, right? So DB2 on cloud and DB2 on hosted, it's available.
Yeah, the systems we know our customers want this level of freedom, run everywhere and scale fast.
Yeah, with DB2 as a native cloud service, you can now scale up to a native DB within 20 minutes on cloud. So thanks, Caleb. Wonderful job. Thank you. Great.
Thank you very much.
Exciting announcement. I mean, changing technology and demands require extreme adaptability in data management, right? So
change is certainly constant. The Internet of Things is creating new requirements to manage huge amount of data to stream real time. And it really is the advent of new apps that use these data, apps that not only you know, but that not only know you, but know you in the environment and the situation you're currently in. So it's always like a 3D view of you.
Yeah, those apps require a lot of data. So I want to talk about Project Event Store. So folks, I mean, we heard about this earlier. 8 seconds is what we get from a human being as far as attention span goes. I have a video, a demo that we want to show, which is about 37 seconds. So please pay attention. This is going to blow you away because we have the fast ingest, more than 1 million inserts per second, more than 1 million inserts per second. And it brings together the strength of IBM innovation with open source. And there's no vendor lock-in. We are using Parquet format, where you can easily port the data between different organizations, and it simplifies the landscapes. It replaces multiple stores. You can throw away your Lambda architecture with single store for both ingest and analytical data. So the video is about a department store where we are tracking the foot traffic, how many people are coming in. And as they come in, we are giving them incentives, and then we are going to do analytics to see how effective was our campaign. So can we roll the video? So here you see on the left-hand side, the number of inserts or ingest happening, right? And we have 3 nodes, node 1, node 2, node 3 on commodity hardware. And on the right-hand side, you see the user movements and the ads shown to customers. But look at that. I mean, it's more than 1 million inserts per second. Just to give it in perspective, our closest competition can do 30,000 inserts per second. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. So if you go to the next video, now we are going to do analytics on what you just saw, which is on the second screen. So on the left-hand side, we are showing you all the departments that generate the most revenue. So you can see by the different bars which department generate the most revenue. And on the right-hand side, it gives you a map of United States, and you can see by county which one generated most income. So we are doing, not only we are ingesting data, but we are bringing it in. You can do real-time analytics on it. So this is Project Event Store. This is the fast ingest. And when we talk about the combination of IBM's innovation and open source technology, this is it. And Kate, we talked about the complexity of the data and simplifying, freeing the data. This is it. Hopefully that all makes sense.
I get it now. I get that simplicity now. We can still be fooled by technology, can't we? I get it now. And Dinesh, thank you very, very much indeed for demonstrating then how we can make it simpler to access our data. Rob's back with us. We've come full circle then. It's been a great day.
Absolutely. I mean, you've started to see what's possible, and anybody can do it. I think the lesson inside a lot of this is change is a given. It's headed right towards you. You can try to duck it. You can try to outdistance it. The key thing is you do not want to be where you are right now a year from now, because the market's getting very aggressive. It's moving incredibly fast. You've seen many examples of how data science and machine learning are changing how we interact with the world and how you need to do business.
We have uncovered a lot of truth then about data today. You don't have to be some mythical creature then to get meaningful insight from data, as you've taught me this morning.
Yes, so why don't we go back one more time to the smartphone problem?
Should we see if we
one
can
more thing.
solve it? Okay.
All right. All right, Kate, you've become quite proficient as a data scientist. Let me just let's back up, let's go through what we've talked about. We talked about Cognos Analytics, showed us how you were having a hard time keeping up the volume of orders. Then in Watson Analytics, we showed you we have problems in some countries. How can we start to predict or shape demand in some countries? So now we're going to actually you're going to use machine learning to shape demand and create a personalized offer, a celebrity experience is what I called it, for an individual, okay?
Okay, so I'm not a machine learning expert, so is this going to be an easy thing for me to do?
You are actually now a machine learning expert.
Am I?
You just don't know it yet. Yes, it's going to be incredibly simple,
Okay.
So here we are in data science experience, and we've got to figure out who our ideal customer is, and how do we predict buyers?
Yeah.
Any idea how we can do that? I told you were an expert. I gave you credit. Come on, help me out.
How do we predict? I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer. Tell me, how do we predict our buyers?
So when you were young, you learned by seeing, by examples, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to teach the system what a purchaser looks like. We're going to pull up customer data and prep that data. So we got here a list of A phone customers that you can see here. So Kate, I'm going to let you do this. So why don't you just click next.
Okay.
You've already got the segmentation list, and here's you got the prepared data set.
So we've got a lot of information in here in terms of education, profession, income.
Yep.
There's a lot of statistics in there that's all readily available then to be drilled down into.
Exactly. So now let's move towards building a model. So you can hit next again.
Okay.
Kate Silverton, folks, doing it right here. All right, so you can choose different techniques. And in this case, I'm going to help you with this one. We want to determine, can somebody be a buyer or not? So we're going to do as a binary classification. So we select that.
Okay,
and then you've got, hold on.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Not too fast, Kate.
Okay.
Now we've got different models you can choose. So you can choose a logistic regression, or you can use a random forest classifier. What do you think we should use?
Which one do I go for? Did Hillary mention regression earlier on to go for first? No.
She did. Actually, she did. You've been paying attention.
But let's be a bit disruptive and go for the random forest classifier.
Well, actually, I'm going to suggest, how about we let data science experience tell us what we should use? I think it's smarter than either you or I. So hit next again.
Okay. Okay.
So now, which one would you choose based on what you see here?
So what you're telling me from this is that they both work, but logistic regression would give me a good result, i.e. sort of good in terms of accuracy, but random forest classifier will give me an excellent result. So of course I'm going to go with that one.
Exactly. So this is technology built in IBM research that we call it cognitive assistance. It's helping you be a better data scientist, okay? So we got that. So now let's go over and let's actually start to dig into a specific person and see if we could try running predictions. Sound okay to you?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a fictional person. You can scan down, we see a little data, it's a female, you can see age group, got a master's education, income. All right, so now, maybe perhaps a drum roll. Kate Silverton to hit the predict button.
So let's find out what we're going to see from this. 80%, so this tells us that if we target this lady, she's 80% likely to go with what we want her to go with, i.e. say yes.
Exactly. So then right away we know, let's treat her as a celebrity because she has an 80% likelihood of buying if we treat her that way. So we're able to better understand and shape demand because we're targeting individuals here. You're not doing too bad, actually, for a journalist turned data scientist. It's happened right here before everybody in the audience.
Thank you very much indeed. Rob, I have to thank you. It has been utterly, utterly fascinating today and compelling. And I hope everybody else here and in our audience today, with all of you watching, what Rob and his team have shown us today is that everything we do then, everything we touch, is being transformed into data points that can actually be made sense of, and that data science can be used to make your businesses run better, make our lives more seamless. It's very real, it's accessible in a way that perhaps hasn't been seen before. So as I say, I really hope that everyone in our viewing audience has enjoyed the past 2 hours and are indeed excited about the possibilities that lie ahead. Rob, I'm going to ask you to come and take a step forward. A few final thoughts from you for everybody.
Absolutely. Look, the data science renaissance is starting now. And today was about trying to give you some ideas, try to create some different approaches that each of you can use in your organizations. You don't have to be a victim of the data revolution. Everybody in the audience has been watching. Now is your chance to lead. Let's take action. Kate, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you very much. Well, from Rob, for me, the team here then for FasTrack from Munich, wishing you the very best then on your data journey, wherever it may take you. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rob.
Great job.
Thank you.